8:33, and for weeks we've been hearing about the cuts to the Department of Education. Now they are finally here, and the numbers are a bit staggering.
Yeah, the workforce has been slashed in half, with more than 1,300 people fired and around 600 taking buyouts. Schools and students are now scrambling to figure out what this all means. So joining us this morning is Erica Meltzer, the national editor for Chalkbeat magazine. She's going to kind of help us understand what this means for all of us here in the tri-state area. So good morning to you, Erica. Thanks for taking the time to be with us.
Thanks for having me.
I mean, like we said, we've been bracing for these cuts. Now they're here. So can you kind of lay out exactly what this means for us? Like what divisions exactly within the education department are going to be hit the hardest with these layoffs?
So these layoffs are touching almost every function of the department, but some divisions are definitely hit harder than others. And that includes the Federal Student Aid Office that handles financial aid. It includes the Civil Rights Division, which investigates complaints on everything from racial discrimination to disability discrimination. And education research was also particularly hard hit. And these are the folks that help us understand how are students doing and what works to improve academic performance.
So now that you just mentioned it, right? So the Education Department's Civil Rights Office, for the New York field office, that is, what happens to cases that they were looking into, right? How do they move forward?
So the Education Department has said, we are going to still investigate these cases, but it's going to look different. It's really hard to imagine that they're going to get the attention that they were currently receiving. New York is the largest school system in the country. There was a dedicated field office here. That is one of 7 field offices that has been, to our understanding, essentially eliminated. Many of those lawyers were already working dozens of cases for each person. And so presumably those will be absorbed into more centralized offices. But it's really hard to imagine how those cases, some of which were just sort of in the middle of investigations, are just going to be handed over to another person and still get the attention.
Yeah, and then when you hear people talking about cuts to finance, does it mean actual cuts to financial aid, or is it going to slow down people getting their financial aid?
This is an important distinction. So far, we have not had budget cuts. That is something that people are worried about. They have cut a lot of grants and contracts, but we haven't had these really big budget cuts to financial aid. But if you, let's say you have a problem filling out the FAFSA and you're trying to get someone on the phone, there's several hundred fewer people to answer those calls now.
So the cuts to the English Language Acquisition Division, right? Let's talk about that, which includes bilingual education, ESL programs, and is an area of concern, especially in our area, the tri-state, where language is so important. And being bilingual, trilingual, right? But aren't those programs required? Aren't they required by law?
These programs are required by law, and the department has said everything that we're statutorily required to do, we're going to keep doing, but we have not yet seen a plan for what that actually looks like. And this is a division. It helped with teacher training. It provided grants to school districts for newcomer students, many of these new migrant students, which we've seen a lot of in the last couple of years. They provided resources to help schools serve those students. And so it's just a big question of what that programming will look like without the staff that were running it.
But how are schools supposed to even plan for this? You mentioned that there's no cuts to financial aid, but across the board, as far as you know, there's no cuts to any of the funding, state funding, or federal funding, rather, that are going to our schools.
Yeah, there's been cuts to specific grant programs.
Okay.
Some of these contracts and grants have been very abruptly cut off. There was just the USDA just announced a big cut to a grant that helped school lunch programs buy local food. But the really big funding sources that go to special education, that go to high poverty schools, currently those have not been touched, but we know there's sort of pretty intense budget negotiations going on. We don't know, we're going to be coming into a new budget year in a couple of months. So people are very concerned about what the budget situation will look like going forward, but we don't know yet. There hasn't been specific cuts.
Yeah, to be continued for sure, right? So we'll continue the conversation and we'll look for your reporting at Chalkbeat. Erica, thank you for being here this morning.